All right, so everyone knows Usain Bolt, right? Fastest man alive. But today, we're not just talking about those incredible races, we're digging deeper.
Right, going past the headlines.
Exactly. We've got excerpts from a Bolt biography, looking for those like behind the scenes stories, the stuff that made him more than just speed, like what made him him, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like everyone sees the lightning, but what about the storm that brewed it up, right? Where did that power come from?
Okay, love that analogy. So, first thing that struck me, his hometown, Sherwood Content, Jamaica. I mean, when I think Olympic athlete, a tiny village isn't the first image that pops into my head.
And that's what makes it so interesting. It challenges the whole gotta be from the big city to make it big idea.
Totally. Plus, the book mentions his parents were shopkeepers, hardworking, part of the community.
Seems like that environment really instilled a work ethic in Bolt from the get-go, something that went beyond just sports.
Hmm. So it's not just about the lack of fancy training facilities, but the values he learned early on. Makes you think. But here's the thing, the bio says young Bolt was obsessed with cricket and football, not track. Was super speed just in his DNA, or did those other sports somehow build it without him realizing?
Million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture. Honestly, the book doesn't give a clear-cut answer,
Yep.
but it does talk about how playing multiple sports helps with coordination, agility, all those things any sprinter needs.
Yeah, true.
So maybe those were Bolt's hidden training grounds in a way.
Yeah, love that. A hidden training ground. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
Yeah.
The biography mentions he had some early struggles. Scoliosis, a curved spine. I can't even imagine competing at all with that, let alone becoming the best in the world.
It really is mind-blowing. Scoliosis can mess with your balance, flexibility, all the things that are crucial for a sprinter. The book doesn't go into all the medical details, but it does say Bolt had to work twice as hard on core strength and specific stretches just to be on the same level as other athletes. That kind of dedication, even before he was famous, that's saying something.
Definitely. Though some people might say, hey, maybe scoliosis, those dirt tracks he trained on, maybe that actually toughened him up, like a disadvantage turned into a secret weapon.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. I don't know if there's a simple yes or no answer. I mean, it definitely wasn't easy for him,
Right.
but maybe it forced him to develop that mental toughness really early on. Like, if every step is a battle, you kind of have to learn to fight harder.
I see what you're saying.
But it also makes you wonder, right? Like, how much faster could he have been if he'd had top-notch facilities and resources from day one?
That's the part that gets me. It's not a straightforward hero's journey. And speaking of challenges, the bio mentions Bolt being criticized early in his career. Some even called him lazy. Can you believe that?
Oof. Yeah, I bet that stung, especially for someone who was clearly gifted. But it shows that even Bolt, the guy who redefined speed, he still had to deal with people doubting him. There's something kind of human about that, you know?
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to being underestimated at some point, even if we're not trying to win Olympic gold.
100%. Okay, but things really start to shift in this next chapter. Coach Glenn Mills enters the picture in 2004. The book calls him the architect of Bolt's success. Was this just about physical training, or was there more to it?
It seems like Mills was the missing piece,
Mm.
you know? He brought structure and discipline to Bolt's raw talent. Think of it like you've got amazing ingredients, right? Incredible potential, but you need that chef who knows how to bring it all together or create something truly special.
Makes sense. But I have to wonder, Bolt always had that playful, fun-loving vibe. Did that clash with Mills's stricter coaching style, or did they figure out how to make discipline fun?
That's where things get really interesting. Some sources say their personalities did clash sometimes, like maybe Bolt felt a bit stifled by all the rules.
I could see that.
But others say that Mills knew how to channel Bolt's energy, make that hard work feel more like play.
Oh, interesting.
There are even stories about them joking around during training but never actually slacking off.
Yeah.
Finding that balance is probably key, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, for sure. And here's the crazy thing. They actually turned Bolt's weakness into a strength. Apparently, his starts were notoriously slow.
Really?
Yeah, but they worked and worked and worked to improve them. It makes you think, right, what weaknesses are we ignoring that could actually be our hidden strengths?
That's the takeaway, isn't it?
right.
We don't have to be perfect. It's all about figuring out where we can improve and putting in the work. Like Bolt, he could have just accepted those slow starts, but he chose to fight them. And look what happened.
Exactly. Okay, we've got to talk about Beijing 2008. Those world records, 9.69 seconds in the 100 meters, 19.30 on the 200. It's one thing to see those numbers, but to actually visualize him running like that, it's almost unreal.
Yeah, like watching a human being defy what we thought was possible. The book talks about the whole stadium being in awe. Even those commentators who'd seen it all, they were speechless. But what really fascinates me is how he won those races, not just the times themselves.
You're talking about those pre-race antics, right? The dancing, the big grin on his face. Some people said it was arrogance, but the book suggests it was actually a strategy.
Exactly.
Mm.
Like, it seems kind of crazy, right? The
Yeah.
biggest race of his life, and he's acting like he's at a party. But some sports psychologists have said that it might have been a way of dealing with the pressure. By looking relaxed, maybe he was calming himself down and messing with his competitors at the same time.
Talk about a mind game. It also challenges this whole idea that athletes have to be super serious all the time. Maybe having fun is part of the recipe for success, who knows. But Bolt also changed how people saw tall sprinters. Before him, it was like a disadvantage, right?
Yeah, the thinking was tall sprinters were too heavy, couldn't accelerate fast enough. Bolt flipped the script on that one. The book gets a bit into the science, and basically his longer strides meant he took fewer steps to cover the same distance. A huge edge once he got going.
So he didn't just win, he changed the game entirely. And his influence goes way beyond the track. He became this global icon, not just for Jamaica, but for the spirit of sports in general.
It's true. The book talks about how Bolt wasn't just representing a country. He represented this joy in competition, this sportsmanship that people connected with all over the world. Reminded us that winning isn't the only thing, that striving for your best can be beautiful on its own.
Yeah, and he never hid where he came from, always proud of his Jamaican roots. It's inspiring to think about how many kids, especially those from like underprivileged backgrounds, saw themselves in Bolt's success.
Absolutely. Representation matters. Bolt showed that a champion could come from anywhere, look like anyone, gave hope to those who might have thought their dreams were out of reach. And he didn't just inspire with words, you know. He created the Usain Bolt Foundation.
Oh, right, the foundation. I was going to ask about that. The book mentions they support some really specific causes, like education for kids who don't have access, youth sports programs back in Jamaica. It's one thing to admire Bolt from afar, but that foundation's a real way to actually support what he believes in.
Shows that a true legacy isn't just about your own wins. It's about helping others reach their potential too.
Hmm.
But the book doesn't shy away from the fact that even legends face tough times off the track. Bolt's post-retirement journey wasn't always smooth sailing.
Right, like the music career, the business ventures. Not all of them were hits. It's kind of comforting to know that even Usain Bolt isn't immune to setbacks.
It makes him more relatable, right? We put these heroes on pedestals, but Bolt's story reminds us they're human too. And it gets you thinking, how do we deal with failure, especially when we've been so successful before?
He's talked about feeling a bit lost after he retired from running. I think anyone who's leaving a job or a role that was a huge part of their life, they can relate to that feeling. How do you find your purpose when that chapter ends?
It's a tough question, for sure, and there's no one easy answer. But I think Bolt's story gives us some hints. Like he's mentioned how important it was to have his family and close friends around him during that transition, just being surrounded by those people who know you for you, not just for your accomplishments.
Yeah, that makes sense. When your whole identity is wrapped up in one thing, it's easy to lose sight of who you are outside of that.
Right. But the book also suggests that Bolt just has this drive, this need to keep pushing himself, even after he stopped winning medals.
Mhm.
Do you think that's part of what makes him so resilient?
Maybe, yeah. It's like he can't help but keep striving for something.
Definitely. He could have just relaxed, enjoyed his retirement. But that's not Bolt. He went for music, tried business ventures, all these different things. Some of them flopped, sure, but that willingness to try new things, to risk failure, that takes serious resilience.
It's almost like he's wired differently.
Could be. But it makes you wonder, is resilience something you're born with, or can you actually learn it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Probably a bit of both, honestly. Some people might naturally bounce back easier, but I truly believe it's a skill you can develop. It's about building up that mental strength, learning to see setbacks as opportunities to grow.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Most of us aren't dealing with Olympic level pressure.
True, but life throws curveballs at everyone, right? Big or small. It's about having those tools to deal with them. The book mentions how Bolt used visualization techniques before his races.
Like picturing himself winning.
Exactly. And maybe we can use that same idea for our own challenges. Visualize ourselves overcoming obstacles, build that confidence in our ability to get back up when we fall.
I like that. It's like mental training, right? Like you train your body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I also think Bolt's playful attitude, his ability to have fun even under pressure, that plays a role too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, resilience isn't just about gritting your teeth and powering through. It's also about finding those moments of joy, those things that give you energy and keep you going.
Absolutely.
So maybe the lesson here is that resilience is more complex than we think. It's about mental toughness, yes, but also support systems, a willingness to grow, and even maybe a little bit of fun along the way.
Well said. Bolt's story reminds us that even the greatest athletes, they stumble sometimes. But it's how you get back up, how you learn from those tough moments that really defines you.
We've covered a lot today, from Bolt's small town beginnings to becoming a global icon and all the ups and downs in between. What's the biggest takeaway for you from his journey?
For me, it's that talent means nothing without dedication and hard work. Sure, Bolt was naturally gifted, but he also put in countless hours, pushed his limits, overcame obstacles. That's a lesson that goes way beyond sports.
Wow.
Success is about the journey, not just the finish line. And often it's those challenges along the way that shape us into who we are.
That's a great way to put it. As we wrap up our deep dive into the life of Usain Bolt, I hope you all leave feeling inspired, not just by his athletic achievements, but by his resilience, his spirit, and that unwavering belief in himself.
And remember, we all have that potential inside us. It's up to us to nurture it, to face those challenges head on, and to find that joy in the process. That's how we create our own version of greatness.
And that's it for this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Usain Bolt. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to be the best version of yourselves.